Welcome back to the WCS America Premier League. We're here in the last group of the round of 32, Group A. Before we get into our next match, let me remind you guys, if you're interested in developing a career in the game design industry or the esports industry, check out the educational opportunities Full Sail University offers. Go to www.fullsail.edu to get more information on their programs in animation, video production, 3D design, 2D design, audio engineering, game design, all these cool different educational tools that are needed to get a stable career in the game design industry. Full Sail University is, of course, the official education partner of the MLG. Now, our next match of the day is going to be Capoch versus Huck. Now, look at how we got there real quick. We can see in the first match of the day, we saw Capoch get taken out 2-0 by Sen. We then saw Crank take out Huck 2-0, and then Crank also took out Sen to be the first player from his group to advance to the round of 16.
And that means we're going to be seeing Sen in the last match of the night, but of course, before then, we're going to see Capoch versus Huck, and then the winner of that's going to go on to fight Sen in that last match. Now, the loser here will go down to the challenger bracket, and they're going to have to fight their way back up in order to get to the Premier League in season number 2.
That's right. Neither player wants to do that. This is their last chance here in this current Premier League season. Whoever loses here is going to be back to that Challenger Division. A best of 3. The first map is on Whirlwind. A great map for a PvP.
That it is. And you know what? Given that we have 3 Protosses today, I thought we were going to see a lot more Protoss versus Protoss, but this is our second one, and we're going to have a third ZVP as our last match.
Yes. That, of course, is correct. Crank blazed through this group in an absolute blaze of glory there. But he's out and through. Sen awaits the winner of this series. Could it be the blue Protoss at the bottom left? Capoch. Or is it going to be the red Protoss at the top right? Team Evil Geniuses, Huck.
Now, Huck played pretty strongly in the first couple of games he had tonight, but unfortunately just was not strong enough to take out Crank. And so I think he's going to be pretty well off in this series. However, Capoch, he hasn't played in a number of hours now. And so he's going to be probably a little bit more warmed up. He's going to, have a little bit more time between his matches and probably not be as worn down. Hopefully, sat around, read a book, had a coffee, and is now ready to go for round number 2. And this time, I think he's going to be a little bit better off because it's going to be a PvP instead of a ZVP, which I believe, if we saw before, his win rates in ZVP or PvZ were not that astounding, but PvP he was doing a lot better in.
Definitely a matchup that I'd say both these players favor. Huck, of course, a PvP master, a lot of people say, but he did fall to Crank already. So, is his faith in his PvP shaken a bit from that first series he played?
And before we were reading that he was saying he might not play so well if he's not, feeling so healthy. So, it could be a day where it's just things are against him. I mean, as I said before, when we were watching him at DreamHack, things were working totally for him, and Huck was, a beast, came out and 2-0'd Grubby. But maybe not tonight. But we'll see in this match, and so far, nothing too crazy coming out from either of these players, both of them going for double gas and getting the cyber cores underway.
More standard opening, I'd say, is the double gas before core in modern PvP. We do see a divergence, though. Capoch is probe scouting, and he's getting his L, whereas Huck, of course, is doing neither of those two things.
Huck just wants to keep all of his probes. Huck just wants to keep his probes on the mineral line, keep them getting those sweet, precious minerals, getting more and more units out, of course.
You know what? Huck has a reputation for not probe scouting in PvP, and I think Capoch is going to take advantage of that by doing a retro 4-gate. This is so cool. I haven't seen someone 4-gate in competitive PvP in Heart of the Storm yet, and he's doing it because he knows that Huck almost never probe scouts. He also probably noticed the build Huck did in that first game against Crank with that fast expansion.
And he is going for that fast expansion. And this is exactly what we were talking about when we first saw Capoch before. He's not as easily read. Oh, probe does get away. He's not as easily read because he hasn't been on so many tournaments that we have a lot of evidence against what kind of playstyle he goes for. Whereas Huck,
of course, he's a pylon.
Much easier to read because he is in a lot of these types of tournaments. You can see what type of playstyle he goes for. And Capoch
He sees the pylon.
Oh, that mothership core is going to turn this game around, I think. It's going to help him out at least.
You know the interesting thing about the way these builds interact is that another little proxy pylon going up there. You can go a very fast expansion and you should still beat a 4-gate if you macro correctly and get enough sentries out. But Huck's actually getting a stalker instead of a second sentry. This might make it a little bit tough to continually hit those perfect force fields that he needs to hit to defend his ramp.
And hopefully he's not going to try and defend with probes like we saw in that first game of the, second game of the proxy gate. He is starting to move a couple of probes down here. He's going to see the proxy pylon, and now he's going to try and get those probes out of there as soon as possible.
Gets a pylon to the high ground.
But very nicely done. Uses the photon overcharge of the Nexus that's just finished up to help defend this, doing a lot of damage to the Stalkers. They're going to try and hide in this corner, but unfortunately they're a little bit too large to hide in that very slim corner.
Huck did lose his sentry, though, which is huge. Losing that first sentry means Capoch could have walked up the ramp, but Capoch maybe didn't anticipate that Huck wouldn't have an extra sentry until just now. So now the opportunity is gone to head up that ramp.
Photon overcharge doing a lot of damage to that one proxy pylon. Here comes Capoch with a huge attack once again, trying to get up that ramp. There are 2 sentries still. 1 sentry is going to go down. There's an Immortal, though, and that's going to do extra damage against those Stalkers. So incredibly damaging is that Immortal. But now that the proxy pylon's still alive, he can start warping in units directly at the natural. And I think Huck's going to have to let that one go.
Definitely probably wants to give up that natural expansion versus all those Zealots. With good force fields, he should have no problem holding his main, though. And remember, Huck right now, he's ahead in workers. Right now, he's ahead in tech. He has the robotics and the Immortal out as well.
So he just needs to survive this push. He needs to keep getting units out and hopefully ward this off and not let Capoch get into a position where he can take advantage from this.
I'd like to see Huck just go straight for the support bay and go for 1 base Colossus timing from here on out. One thing the only thing Capoch has going for him is that he has a contain right now, and with this sentry, if he hits force fields correctly, Huck can't really move down his ramp until he gets either Blink Stalkers or an Archon or a Colossus.
Now Huck's getting a couple more gateways out here. He's getting a Warp Prism.
That's another great move. In fact, while he's waiting to get one of those several units needed to break down the ramp, he can counter drop his opponent.
A little bit scary here. He does move his Immortals to the top of the ramp there. They could easily get force fielded.
Capoch has nothing to give him vision, so there's no way he can get that force field behind Immortals.
This is
2 Immortals can be very scary to attack also if you just have Stalkers.
He does have those Zealots, though, so that force field could potentially give him the ability to use just the Zealots on the Immortal. Warp Prism has now finished up here. It's picked up both of the Immortals. Going back and forth a little bit. Now actually forcing his way down the ramp. There is a force field that's dropped, but here comes the Immortals doing as much damage as possible to just straight going for those Stalkers. Beautiful play here by Huck. He's going to be able to break out of this containment.
A very, very nice way to break out. Not using Warp Prism to counter his opponent, but saying, okay, if you're going to not continue to reinforce the contain, if you're going to try to hold it with only 4 Stalkers, I'm just going to drop Immortals around and using Warp Prism, they'll be safe from Zealots, and once I push the Stalkers and the Sentry back, then I can just move down the ramp and take my expansion. So going forward, Huck definitely has the army advantage right now, but Capoch does have that expansion, and he's catching up in probe count as well.
26-32 in the probe count right now, and as long as he can keep chrono boosting out his probes, he's going to be able to catch up. But the problem is whether or not he's going to have to decide chrono boosting probes or chrono boosting tech and army. Because Huck now has, as we were saying before, a pretty sizable army, and moving right on up into actually just more and more Immortals.
I don't think Huck's going to make the same mistake he did against Crank and throw away an advantage by attacking in PvP up a ramp without any units that can deal with force fields. Neither player can really hurt the other player very much. Of course, Huck does have the ability to do some light harass with this Warp Prism. Huck's he's cut pro production. Is he going for another timing? Warping in more sentries. If he gets into a force field war, it is possible he could break Capoch, but it's going to require amazing force fields on Huck's part.
Capoch keeping the mothership core in the very back of the main base, and that's going to allow it to be a little bit out of... It's going to require a little bit of travel to get the photon overcharge, but still going to be not vulnerable.
Warp Prism comes in here. Huck's trying to distract his opponent in the main, then he's going to attack a natural at the same time.
He drops A bunch of Zealots starting to do some damage. There's a Photon Overcharge, so he baited it out this time. It's not going to be at the natural where his forces are. The Immortals are trying to do as much work as possible. There are a lot of force fields out here, though.
Great force fields by Huck, because he was able to segment his opponent's army in half, whereas Capoch was unable to do the same with his own force fields. Oh, he missed the last force field in the back to cut off Huck's forces. Back in the main, meanwhile, the Zealots are still battling that Nexus with Photon Overcharge. Probes are being massacred now. Huck's force fields are so good.
A lot of probes going down. But Huck has to pull back for now, and that's going to allow for another Photon Overcharge in the next engagement. But does it really matter? The main Nexus has fallen here for Capoch.
I mean, at this point, Capoch can hold his natural as Huck's been reinforcing in his opponent's main instead of in the frontal attack. But Huck is so far ahead at this point. 2 bases to his opponent's 1. War Prism is even going to escape. Those Zealots are going to return home heroes.
Well done, those Zealots. We're going to throw a party as soon as we get back to the main base, of course, for Huck. That's I mean, everybody's going to the party. Look, everybody got an invitation, except for that one Stalker. He's stuck at the Zelnaga. He's the one guy who had to go work his shift at, I don't know, 7-Eleven.
His shift may be ending soon, though. Is he going to be recalled as soon as Capoch enters that vision range? Stalker, run!
Oh,
there he goes.
He just got his invitation in time.
Yeah. Heading back, parties at the natural of Huck. Capoch, there's no way he can really get up there and do damage. 4 Immortals, plenty of force fields, lots of energy on that Mothership core, and Huck, knowing his opponent was out on the map, sending his Zealots back in, and even warping in some more to do another harassment in the main. He's trying to keep his opponent off balance until he can get a couple Colossi out, and then he'll just have such a massive army advantage at that point.
Those poor Zealots aren't going to even be able to go to their own party. In fact, one of the party members is going to fall. No, actually, he's still alive. 1 health, still going at it. Capoch, of course, trying to take out the War Prism, but it's unsuccessful. And who would have thought it? The guy who had 1 health actually was the second one to die. The full health Zealot was the one who was the first to die.
Huck's not entirely out of the woods yet. He's up by about 10 workers, but if he gets too complacent, Capoch can equalize that worker count. Capoch is going to equalize the base count very shortly as his main is being retaken. It sounds kind of funny he's taking his main, the 15-minute mark, but that is what's happening, and he's equalizing attack as well.
But the Colossus tech is definitely in Huck's favor here. He's got Thermal Lance already underway. I don't think, Capoch has not even started Thermal Lance, so his Colossus are going to be coming out, but they're going to have very short range compared to Huck's. So that means they're going to be a little bit more exposed. They're going to be a little bit more vulnerable for those Immortals of Huck's, which he's got 4 of, to be able to run in and take out that Colossus very, very quickly.
The Zealots saying that War Prism is a little bit of a dangerous place to be. Let's go home. War Prism says, okay, I'll go harass on my own now. Just hanging out, but now it looks like Huck may go for a frontal assault, trying to take advantage of the timing when he has that Colossi range and his opponent hasn't yet completed it.
2 Phoenixes being hallucinated here. They're going to go try and scout, but unfortunately the Stalkers that came in before are going to be able to take out 1 of them.
War Prism pokes in again, sees some Stalkers, retreats. Huck will probably use it to warp in additional units to reinforce his attack and then head back into the main. Or he could just concentrate all his forces in one direction. He does have the larger army right now. He does have the advantage of having Colossi range as well.
He's also getting Gravatic Drive, which is going to make his Warp Prism harassment even better. That's going to increase the Warp Prism speed by a lot.
Those Zealots are missing the party. Huck's food advantage isn't quite as big as you think it would be with all those units back at home.
Warp Prism tries to get in there. Photon Overcharge is used. Force Field's thrown down, but with the Colossus as a massive unit is able to break those Force Fields. Time Warp is thrown down as well from this Mothership core, but Huck is zoning his opponent onto his ramp. The Immortals all still alive. One of them pretty hurt, but hasn't died just yet. And of course, they can take out that Colossus very, very quickly, and that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're zoning that Colossus so far back that it looks like this Nexus at the natural base is going to go down.
Immortals doing a little bit of a jig, back, forth, back, forth. Now they're coming in, going after that Colossus. Take it down in just a couple of volleys. The expansion from Capoch falls as well. And this is a situation where there's no way he can recover.
Yeah, not at all. The Observer now also giving high ground vision. The Immortals just chasing after that Colossus. A couple more pew-pew lasers from the other Colossus for Huck are going to be able to take out Capoch's Colossus. Nothing but a couple of Stalkers left. GG here from Capoch. Huck takes game number 1.
A really nice PvP there by Huck. He knew exactly how to deal with that 4-gate, of course. Even though he opened with a Nexus before a single unit, he then was able to get that sentry out in time and defend his main base and use the fact that he had greater probe count and a faster attack to basically have an advantage going into the mid-game.
Super well played there by Huck. Well, let's get on to game number 2 here, but we'll be right back after a quick break.